Ridiculous.
Ridiculous, but I bet it was for a significant amount of money.
Still ridiculous.
Yeah, but fun. I'd watch it. Look, Jake Paul wants to test himself against actual, not just world champion, but one of the greatest of all time.
Really fought, and it wasn't fixed. Jake Paul would not survive 45 seconds.
I don't know about that. I think it would take a few rounds.
Really?
But yeah. First of all, Jake is a lot bigger. Jake's a lot bigger.
But what way would they fight?
Well,
it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started up. I would have tell you. I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my what I'm looking at. Right?
After his fight with Gervonta Davis was cancelled, Joe Rogan was shocked to learn that Jake Paul had given Francis Ngannou the opportunity to be his next opponent. Rogan described the fight as crazy and even reckless for the YouTuber turned boxer on his podcast. Rogan questioned whether Jake really understood what he was getting himself into because the UFC veteran turned boxing juggernaut is one of the most lethal punchers in combat sports. Nevertheless, he acknowledged that if the contest ever took place, it would be a huge spectacle.
Nikita calls Francis. This is Francis telling the story. Nikita calls Francis and says, "Hey, we need your help. We need an opponent for Jake. Tank is out." And Francis says, "All right." And Francis says, "Well, how can I help you?" Nikita says, "Well, we're looking at an opponent for Jake. Tank Davis is out." And Francis says, "All right, but specifically, how can I help you?" Nikita takes a third swing at the bat. He says, "Well, we need an opponent. We need a boxer. We need a partner. We need somebody to fight Jake. Tank is out." And Francis asks him again, "Okay, what?"
Jake Paul and his crew hurried to find a replacement when their exhibition date with Gervonta Davis collapsed due to the mounting legal accusations against Davis. Francis Ngannou, a former UFC heavyweight champion turned crossover boxer whose size, strength, and renown make him one of the most dangerous men in striking sports, was one of the choices put out.
I think the fight is going to be completely canceled and rescheduled, and now we have potential opponent names and some people being ruled out coming into today. This is not a joke. It was said by Mike Coppinger and others that the #1 candidate to replace Tank Davis in a Jake Paul fight, probably on a different date, was going to be Francis Ngannou. What the But we have an update on that and other potential names that Jake could fight. Again, I think on a separate date, and why I think the Jake and Tank fight is completely off. No more, maybe, no more, we don't think it'll happen.
Michael Bisping used the fact that Paul's initial target was Gervonta Davis, a considerably smaller lightweight. Before that fell through to highlight the remarkable size disparity in the rumored bout between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou. Paul is on opposing ends of a spectrum in terms of physical dimensions and challenge when he moves from Davis to Ngannou, according to Bisping. He emphasized that going from a small opponent to someone with Ngannou's size and strength causes a mismatch in raw mass reach and threat credibility in addition to skill or record.
Tyson was 58, Anderson Silva, who was way past his prime, people like Nate Diaz, who were way smaller. Gervonta Davis really did take the piss. I mean, that was just the craziest shout ever. To go from fighting Gervonta Davis, way smaller, to now fighting boxing Francis Ngannou. I mean, listen, if he does it, fair play. But I just call #1 bullshit on this brother, because I don't see this happening. No.
This is #1 bullshit.
I just don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. Nate Diaz, yeah, 100%. I mean, he beat him once already. I'm sure Nate Diaz would love to get another big payday, because obviously boxing on Netflix and going up against Jake Paul, given his success, given the name that he has, and given the magnitude of his events, Nate Diaz will get paid an absolute fortune once again. We know that it wasn't too long ago Jake Paul was talking about boxing Anthony Joshua, and that never came to fruition. There's absolutely no way he would box Anthony Joshua. If he did, if he was to do something like that, whether it be Anthony Joshua or Francis Ngannou, I'd give him his props, I'd give him his credit, and you never know. Maybe he would do it just for the clout, because in many ways it would be, sorry about the airport notifications, it would be, you know, an admirable thing to do, and it would be Jake Paul taking on somebody bigger.
Francis Ngannou claims that he was taken aback when Jake Paul's team contacted him about filling in for Gervonta Davis. He claimed that the plan came out of the blue and didn't fit with his present objectives. Money was allegedly discussed, but Ngannou turned it down, saying the conditions and terms didn't make sense to him. He emphasized that this wasn't about money and questioned how moving from Davis to him was being presented as a sensible choice. It was about the battle making sense from a professional standpoint.
Jake to replace Gervonta. I'm like, who's Jake? I was so confused, I wasn't expecting that at all. And he said, yeah, Jake Paul, he's fighting. And I'm like, no, bro, come on. Don't disrespect me like that. And then they even say they even come out after and say, and what if the number are good? He sent out some number. I'm like, it's not about the number. If it was about the number, we could have started talk. I would have told you. I'm not just interested. It makes no sense for me. It's not my.
Jake Paul received a direct warning from former UFC champion Daniel Cormier about the potential repercussions of taking on Francis Ngannou. Cormier suggests that Paul is unprepared to handle a strike-heavy heavyweight with a mixed martial arts history by highlighting Ngannou's destructive power and the obvious mismatch in experience and size. He presents the situation as one in which Paul would face dire repercussions for replacing someone whose strengths much outweigh Paul's own. It's an obvious message. Money and spectacle are not the only factors in this. The profit is outweighed by the risk.
Fighting Gervonta Davis to calling out Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul don't want those problems. I can't say it any different. Jake Paul does not want any Francis Ngannou problems. He don't. He does not want those issues. While I think it's crazy and I credit him for doing that, and I'm surprised he did that, this could be applauded. Him poking out his chest, saying, I want Francis. He don't want those Francis Ngannou problems. I don't care what Anthony Joshua did to Francis Ngannou. Jake Paul gets in there with Francis. Francis will knock his head off this planet. You don't want those Francis problems. I watched Francis put down Tyson Fury. Sure, Anthony Joshua beat him. But even if Jake got power, I don't think he got power to be dealing with Francis.
Cormier cast doubt on Jake's intentions, speculating that it's more about exposure than sincere rivalry. Jake underestimates what it takes to fight a heavyweight who can punch through gloves, he continues. Ngannou's power is legendary in mixed martial arts, but it becomes even more concentrated in boxing. Cormier cautions that Jake's night may be short if he fights Francis without knowing the distinction between boxing defense and MMA striking.
Right? Boxing is much different than mixed martial arts. The target audience might be the same, but the demographics different. The places where people are brought up are different. There's bigger entourages in boxing. It's just a different world in boxing. We've known that from the very beginning. We know that Gervonta Davis was not going to just play to Jake Paul's rules. I still don't know exactly why this thing is falling apart, but it is falling apart bad. It is bursting at the seams. We are almost exactly where we should have never started. This should have never gotten started, but it did. But we are almost now exactly where we need to be in the fight.
The idea of Jake Paul taking on Francis Ngannou at such short notice has drawn criticism from a number of commentators as being dangerous for both Paul and the fight's overall narrative. They point out that Paul's staff approached Ngannou as a replacement after Gervonta Davis, Paul's initial opponent, withdrew late. But as Ngannou said, it makes little sense for his career trajectory to step in at this late hour. Strategically speaking, Paul wouldn't have enough time to get ready for a heavyweight like Ngannou, who has exceptional strength and experience, due to the short notice. The proposed match between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou and the actual fight between Tyson Fury and Ngannou are being compared by several commentators. They argue that crossover appeal, stylistic mismatch, and spectacle are more important than traditional boxing merit. A bout between Paul Ngannou and Fury would be structured similarly to how Fury faced Ngannou, a former MMA champion, and suffered more than anticipated. A well-known boxer on social media is taking on a formidable athlete with exceptional strength. Even though Fury was the heavyweight champion, He acknowledged that Ngannou made it one of the hardest fights of his previous 10 years.
About this is, okay, if they push it back to December, then that's slightly different. But this is the kind of one situation where you're kind of 10 days out, 2 weeks out from a fight, whenever they first got wind of this problem. This is the kind of situation where it would be possible that Jake Paul and Nikita Badarian and MVP, who are very, very shrewd people, this is the one occasion where they might end up making a mistake, taking someone at short notice who they shouldn't take. Because there'd be a whole raft of people putting their hand up for it, wouldn't they? Thinking, I'll take him at short notice. I'll make out that I've been sitting on a beach, eating and drinking for the last 6 months. I'll anything just to get in there with him. And then on the night, I'm gonna knock his head off. There'll be loads of people putting their hand up for this. And you have to be incredibly careful about who you took at short notice, because for it to have any kind of meaning, you would need to take a decent opponent at short notice, because obviously they're up against it because it's short notice. You couldn't take some barely warm body at short notice, because that would be even worse than giving them full notice. So this is the one area, the one situation in which it would be easy for them to make a mistake, but they don't make mistakes with things like this. They just don't. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they haven't been tempted into, somebody. Ngannou, that'd be a mistake. It'd be such a mistake. I know he got flattened by Joshua, but so what? Joshua was a 2-time unified champion of the world, and Ngannou's 270 pounds of absolute granite. That would have been a terrible, terrible mistake if they'd given him the fight.
And he dropped, like, people. I know, my opinion, Tyson Fury won that fight with Ngannou, but he still put Tyson Fury.
He was close.
Recently, CHA Sonnen expressed his amusement and genuine curiosity about the impending encounter between Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou. He pointed out that the fight lacks the balance of a conventional match when viewed only via a sporting perspective. It's more about seeing how much punishment Paul can take. Sonnen reminded listeners that Ngannou just needed one clean shot to drop Tyson Fury, a seasoned heavyweight with boxing experience and a size advantage over Paul. He believes it is unrealistic that Paul could withstand those same blows without suffering significant harm if Fury struggled to withstand Ngannou's force.
Ngannou retired. Tank still being in the competitive nature of the sport throws this one completely off for me, and the fact that Jake is like 60 pounds bigger than he is. Right? Like, Mike was obviously far older than Jake, and that was the big knock on that fight. Mike should not have been in there with Jake. Said that many times. Jake has fought so hard against people saying he's bad for the sport. He's bad for the sport. He doesn't actually want to fight or step up or do any of this stuff. And I've kind of had his back when I'm like, no, he is doing what most boxers have done early in their career. But this gives those people more ammo to be like, yeah, bro, look, this is what we're talking about. When we say he's bad for the sport, or when we say that he's doing stuff that doesn't make sense and he's making a mockery of things, this is what they're talking about. And again, I wouldn't have any problem with it if Tank was way past the point where he could fight competitively at his weight class and have fights with guys like Shakur Stevens, or even, again, rematching guys.
Big promotions and eye-catching antics have helped Jake Paul establish his reputation, but this time the concept doesn't appear to work. In contrast to his prior battles, which featured opponents who were closer to his weight and level of expertise, this one feels aimless and unbalanced. Jake's quest to remain relevant throughout matchups may ultimately be losing its impact, according to observers. Even after weeks of promotion and interviews, there's a growing perception that this event was designed more for attention than for competitiveness, which explains why ticket sales have not increased.
You can't even grab a hold of the guy or try to squeeze him. You can only bludgeon and be bludgeoned back. I think you're got an uphill battle to question somebody. But they have been very effective in doing just that to Jake. Hey, you started with this NBA guy, and then even those MMA guys, they're not boxers. And then when you got around to the boxers, but they weren't current boxers. Then when you get around to the current boxers, they're not big enough boxers. And I just loved it. When I heard that Francis Ngannou might be going against Jake, I loved it. I mean, what's that going to look like? How many of those shots from Francis can you take? Tyson Fury, if you're talking clean, Tyson Fury only took one. everything else, Tyson was able to roll with. Big Francis only had to hit him one time. Like, that's...
Chael Sonnen continues. Jake's self-assurance and willingness to take on fighters far above his level are entertaining, but facing someone like Francis is an entirely different story. He makes it clear that Jake lacks Tyson Fury's strength, size, and chin. Furthermore, it's difficult to see Jake absorbing even one punch if Fury could only take one.
Thanks real quick. You gotta be the dumbest dude, in the history of boxing, bro. $40 million, dog, down the drain. You gotta be the dumbest dude I've ever seen in the history of boxing, bro. Seriously. I'm like, $40 million, bro. Wealth. Literally wealth, bro. Going down the drain. I don't understand it. I can't make the... I don't understand it. But I'll tell you this. MVP promotions, whatever the hell y'all call it, most valuable promotions, shit, more like rookie promotions. Yeah, more like rookie promotions. You didn't know what you were dealing with. You had no clue. This has always been down Tank's alley, man. Now, let me just say one thing.
Tim Bradley emphasized that the cancellation of the scheduled battle between Davis and Jake Paul affected more than just the two participants. Bradley pointed out that when the arrangement fell through, sponsors, promoters, broadcasters, event locations, and marketing partners all lost money. The fight was supposed to generate significant sponsorship and pay-per-view revenue, but Davis's legal issues led networks to back off and companies to save their reputations. In the meantime, production, marketing, and logistics had already cost money.
It would be something unique. It would be something incredible. It's the same reason that I would be intrigued by a Jake Paul versus Anthony Joshua fight, although I would never advise Jake Paul to take a Anthony Joshua fight. I wouldn't advise him to take a Francis Ngannou fight either, because as much as Anthony is far better, which we saw when they actually fought, Joshua slept Francis Ngannou quicker than me after 2 melatonin. It was quick, fast, in a hurry, completely dominant. But we also saw Francis Ngannou go toe-to-toe with the heavyweight champion of the world at that time. Yes, he was out of shape. We understand that. But Tyson Fury on that night got the shock of his life when Francis Ngannou not only went toe-to-toe, but put him down and danced on him. To this day, I think that fight could have gone Francis' way. Point being, there are levels to this shit. Not just in boxing, but in combat in general. And the size difference Francis would have over Jake would be incredible, but it would have been a great event, and a lot of people would have tuned in. Francis, though, is saying that's not happening.
How can they go from Gervonta Davis to Francis Ngannou? Gervonta Davis is a fantastic boxer, and he's a one-shot knockout artist. But come on, the weight different and everything, it makes no sense.
It's a good point. Obviously, Francis is right about the weight difference, but it's a good point in general for what do you do next? Jake has sparred guys like Shakur Stevenson, Ray Ford, Montana Love to try to prepare for Tank Davis. And even if you book this fight on December 12th or December 19th, that's still a completely different fight than you were going into. Completely different matchup, size-wise, skill-wise, the things that you're going to need to even try to compete.
Most certainly, a large portion of that investment is now lost. Bradley made use of the episode to highlight how unstable boxing's business side is. Everyone who supported the event pays the price when one fighter's reputation suffers. There is a significant disparity in size and power between Francis Ngannou and Jake Paul, which necessitates a radically different strategy from Paul. Additionally, Ngannou's raw strength is comparable to that of the toughest punchers in combat sports because he is a heavyweight, usually weighing about 260 pounds. Paul, on the other hand, is used to dealing with considerably lighter opponents and a game that prioritizes movement, speed, and spectacle over survival. Paul's training camp would need to change drastically if he were to even start competing against a force like Ngannou. From boosting muscle strength and durability to radically rethinking fitness, footwork, and sparring dynamics. When up against a heavyweight that hits like a freight train, what works for lightweight opponents just won't work. To put it succinctly, a lot of pundits think Paul can't treat this fight like any other influencer boxing show. If this battle were to make any competitive sense, he would require months of intense, specialized training with elite trainers. Is this matchup a mismatch that should never occur or an exciting, high-risk event? Please share your opinions in the comments section below.